Welcome back, everybody. It is Wins Above Fantasy, episode 190. I'm Van Burnett, joined as always by Steve Gisueli. Steve, here we are, Thursday, August 21st on the podcast. And my home league season is officially over. And we'll just rip the Band-Aid on that. Missed the playoffs in a heartbreak. And the irony that tonight's show, I get to relive all those great feelings because we're talking about head-to-head playoff primer, tips and tricks and all the best practices that we do. Great rundown, open topic, a little more of the consultation side of Wins Above Fantasy, but we've got some actionable stuff at the end as well that you threw in here on targeting some pitchers against soft lineups. It's going to be a great show. I'm at peace with my grieving process because at least I thought at the time when I lost by, barely an inch on 5 different categories and just missed out on getting to the playoffs. We had like a four horse race for the last one. I thought my team didn't have enough juice to go on and make noise in the playoffs. But of course, like I was telling you off air, 3 days in, I would have been batting like 400 this week with 10 steals. So, it's always a bitter pill, but it wasn't my year. Spencer Strider, I'll just never look at the guy the same in the draft room at least. But enough about me and my home league. It's going to be a great show. How's it going out there?
It's good. It's the last week of my regular season, so we trail 1 week behind you. I don't want to, rub salt in the wound or anything. I do have a playoff spot clinched, but I also feel like my team when I won last year from basically June on was like, rolling. This year it's been exactly the opposite. Like once the calendar turns to June, my team is just you generally have a sense of teams that are rolling well in head to head or in roto, right? That
Yep.
like
The arrow is pointing up.
yeah,
or pointing
and there's
down.
like and not even how the standings go, but you just have and only fantasy players can understand this feeling. You have a general underlying sense of how your team is doing and whether they're truly capable of winning it at all.
Correct.
This team this year for me is I have the opposite of that feeling I had last year. Like I almost am ready to, not never look at this team again. I know that's an insult thing. Is that someone who puts their heart and soul to this and just was eliminated by a half game and would trade to be in my spot in the second. So I understand that.
Yeah.
And also it goes against the exact premise of this show and spirit of this show, and that you only need to win by one category,
And it's 1 week at a time, man.
yeah,
And like, let me be a lesson for your spirits right now that it really can flip. It's like
yeah,
the guys that I've been kind of griping about all season, like a Brian Reynolds, like they can finally turn it on, and it seems like they'll never get into a groove. And then it's like, oh man, all of a sudden, Sandy Alcantara was one of my pickups.
yeah,
Suddenly he looks like an ace. Like it really can happen once you get into the playoffs. Anything can happen. And then it's also, a little bit of it is that luck of will that happen
yeah.
at the right time. But there is a good piece of the pie chart that is managerial, right? And trying to get an edge, which is the whole name of the game. So
Yeah, and I know that there are head-to-head detractors and there are warts to it, but there is an awesome part of it, at least in my opinion, of managing, and there is nothing like managing in the playoffs. Like
mhm.
it is an intense grind. Like you know, at least me, the way I do it, and we'll get about it in detail. Just writing out like and planning
The
every
decision
single
tree.
matchup
Yep.
and every single at bat, and knowing exactly what pitchers are going when. There is the part of the reason why we play this game is we're not good enough to play in the real world, and only the select few, whatever 25,000 players have ever played in the Major League Baseball are able to do that. But it's to give us a taste of that action and getting involved and you know being some sort of manager that has an impact and control of destiny and ability to impact your results, right? So like to like have an extra start and plan a perfect stream in a matchup that swings it one way or another. There's no better feeling than that. That's why we play these silly little games that are fantasy sports. So um it's exciting. It's one of my favorite aspects of it. It's why I prefer head to head, and I know that's sort of a probably I would say a hot take in the fantasy community, maybe at least in baseball.
For the purists, but
Yeah,
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 that's one thing I'm never gonna budge on either, Steve.
yeah.
It
We
really
agree
is.
on that. So,
Yeah.
there's not going to be an argument here between us. But it's a great time of year. As much as like personally, and I don't want to talk about my team too much, but as much as I'm feeling frustrated about my team, like the second that playoff matchup is on, like the juices are going to get flowing. Planning out matchups, everything like that to try and just survive in advance is there's nothing like it. It's
Yep.
super super fun.
Yeah, no, and a totally fair game. I think for both yours and sadly mine, this is the type of show where I think for us to pull in the real world examples kind of
Yeah,
takes
yeah.
it from theory to application. So yeah, by all means we can get into it. But yeah, I mean, Steve, the rundown is a little bit looser. I know we got some topics. The way I had kind of structured my thoughts is around studying and studying or knowing, but it really does start, in my opinion, with your league, and you have to know your league up and down. We say it all the time for drafts as well, but then I think playoffs is critical, and knowing your league, not only applies to the minutia of the rules of your league. Can you, if you've got kind of unlimited ads throughout the playoffs, can you possibly churn to win volume? Can you stash guys in your IL slots going into playoffs? So things like that, but also knowing how your league operates in terms of, will a guy be on the waiver wire that you can drop and you're not worried about dropping him and re-adding him next week. So I think knowing your league is a big one, but I loved where you started out with this on knowing or trying to win the matchup right in front of you, because I got through all of my tactics and it's like 20 bullets long. And then the last thing I said is, God willing, think ahead to your advantages for
Yeah.
next week if you can. But that is a giant if that we rarely have the luxury of actually putting into practice of like, oh, it's Saturday. Why don't I add a pitcher that's a 2-start pitcher for next
Yeah.
week? So talk to me about that idea of kind of winning the matchup in front of you.
Yeah, like I'll during the season, at least in my league, we have like 8 ads a week. Um, if I'm making ads on Sunday for like an at bat for someone that for a hitter, that's someone that's resting, I'll make sure that it's someone that has a game on a light Tuesday or on a light Thursday, right? To try and squeeze more juice out of that specific ad so that,
Mhm.
you have an extra 4 or 5 at bats on a light hitting day. Or, add a pitcher on a Wednesday, right? Um, to try and lock in a 2-start week for the next week, like target that day to stream. That sort of goes out the window in head to head in playoffs. And right, also like when you're in regular season, like you're adding with the intention of holding on to someone, right?
Upside. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, this guy is starting to heat up. Like maybe I'll hold on to him. Like that can go out the window in playoffs. Like, sure, yeah, you want to look for like a miracle run of like I don't know, what was that like Tommy Edman a few years ago, right? In like
Mhm.
2019 in September, right? Or like an Aristides Aquino in August, and get a guy that could go on a miracle run. But that's an absolute long shot for that to happen. You really just have to use it one at a time, especially in limited ad weeks. And even in ones where you don't where you have unlimited, maybe you can be just more aggressive and churn each day, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's the sort of thing. Like everything becomes super super short term. I think it's a hard switch to turn off, right?
Oh,
Because
big time. Big time.
baseball, we talk about this grind and how it wears you down and how you need to be patient all year, and then it's like all of a sudden, okay, no, that doesn't apply anymore.
Yeah,
So it's
a couple of, real quick to jump in, a
Mhm.
couple of examples that came to mind for me is like last week, and it was effectively playoff play-in game because like from fifth place to eighth place and our top six make the playoffs, it was separated by like one category. So
Mhm.
we were all joking that it was our playoff play-in. And Wilson Contreras went on the day-to-day for like one day. And I just was looking at how tight my categories were. I think it was on Wednesday or the Thursday ahead of the weekend. And I was like, yep, normally I would not drop him for JT Real Muto, who was out on the wire. And I was like, but Real Muto has a Thursday game. This is a no brainer for me. Like, didn't
Yeah.
even think twice about it. It was like, thanks for the shift, Contreras. I'm a Cards fan. I had you all season. You were solid enough, but we're moving on. Same with some of the tougher pitching drops. I mean, I know like Shane Boz started slipping, but like if we had 2 months left, I might be like, man, there's so much talent with
Yeah.
Boz. I might want to see it out.
Because you
It's
have
like,
road starts coming up away from,
yep,
uh, the Big
could
Stein or whatever,
exactly couldn't do it. Couldn't hold on to Andy Pajes. He's tailor made for my
Yeah.
league settings. His
Mhm.
league rank was still in like the 80s, and I was like, hey, past 5-6 weeks, you're batting 180. Got to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of that stuff. And another thing that you mentioned there that was kind of scattered in my notes is I do think there is something to looking at your path to winning because you do have to win. You're right that you do have to win the matchup right in front of you. But if you're like me, it's also what's it going to take to actually win the league as well. Like it's when you brought up kind of the lightning in a bottle type of guys, that is something that kind of factors in. And in years past, it was more like, I don't know, like a Mackenzie Gore, or this year for me, in a way, it was Sandy Alcantara, where it was like day to day. I don't know that this is this most stable pick I could need, but my pitching staff was
Yeah.
kind of in shambles, and it was
What
like
needs to go right for you to win?
to actually
Right.
win.
Yeah,
And
to
it's like,
answer that question.
so you have to evaluate, do I need an oatmeal-y guy to just take me from being like a 230 batting average a week up to
Yeah.
245, or am I trying to just push the chips in and say, I'm gonna get a super volatile home run guy, or like a Kyle Manzardo, to just see if I can get one of those 4 homer weeks. So some of that depends on your opponent, your team. And I know that kind of segues into one of the topics you were going to talk about, which is kind of knowing your team's strengths, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's important, and, like, you can have uh, I know a lot of sites, I think Yahoo does it, I know Fantrax does it, like, it tells you your record and categories, throughout the year, like, right, if you've had 23 weeks in your regular season, you could have went, 11, 11, and 1 in saves, and right, or you could have been like 17, 3 and 3 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you won the category 17 times, won it 3, lost it 3 times, tied it 3 times, whatever it is. And you'll know what you're strong in, and you think that that's something that you could guarantee, right? Like, you may have 3 closers, you're going up a team against 1.5, right? But all that takes is like a Monday and Tuesday of your opponent getting 3 or 4 saves somehow and you getting none, and your whole plan is flipped on your head, right? So,
Right.
like,
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily like drop your closers in that situation, but you have to have contingency plans to, because in such short samples, and then I guess this is, that's why there are detractors of this setting. A lot can happen and a lot can go wrong. You can get unlucky in a lot of the ways, but if you're
Mm-hmm.
able to adapt and sort of adjust those quickly, maybe you're able to salvage a 6-6 week and you have a tiebreaker over your opponent or something like that, right? So, like, yes, it's important to know where you're probably going to win, but I would also have plans A, B, and C, in case things go wrong, and maybe you focus on trying to if you do have 4 closers, right, and they're down 3 saves on Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday, maybe you do want to think about getting extra starters, right? Because you're probably going against someone that if they only have one or two closers, has more starters, right, and can volume you that way. And you may need to try and win a battle that you weren't expected to win,
Hmm.
like volume wise, right?
Yep.
That's hurt me in matchups plenty of times before, where it's like, okay, this is I have so many stolen base guys, like this is a no brainer. This person was um, third to last in the league in steals, and like sometimes it just doesn't work out like that. So to be able to adjust to things that don't go your way is something that's easier said than done, but needs to be in the back of your mind, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I think the way you put it, and for this is on like just on steroids in my league because we have like 18 total categories. So there's a lot of different ways. We have like triples as a category. We have, walks, we have offensive strikeouts. So this starts to get into permutations basically where the comment you brought up of in a way playing chess and decision trees. I know we've talked about that for like drafts where it's like if this happens then this, and as rudimentary as it sounds, fire up the note app on your phone and say if walks is out of reach by Thursday, or if I have a 5 steal lead on Thursday and I'm down 1 homer, yeah, maybe you can drop Chandler Simpson, who you normally would not drop, and say, I'm gonna gamble that I've got speed locked up, but I need to go add, a power platoon bat to try to swing homers because of some splits this weekend. So yeah, I think it all kind of culminates, and there's no way that you can keep track of it if you're not writing down your notes. And to your point that you had in the rundown is some of that is knowing who is droppable on your team. And it there's a fine line. I mean, it's you still, especially in early weeks of playoffs, have to leave yourself a fighting chance of turning around and winning the weeks if you advance. But I really do think, I mean, what would you say, Steve? It's like outside of your core kind of fantasy stud all stars. I think even your like certainly your C plus B minus players are able to be dropped, right? It's just outside of like your top 6 bats and top 4 or 5 pitchers. I think anyone's on the table in a way.
I think so. Basically every pitcher in my mind would be droppable in a way. Um, like if there's someone that doesn't have a start, and even he's your best pitcher, if you need a start on Sunday, right? What are you going to do? Are you going to drop a struggling hitter, or are you going to drop a guy that may not make another start for you, right? So I think it's much easier with pitchers, even with like the elite of the elite. Sure, maybe not a top 10 guy, but
Sure.
a guy that is an SB2 or SB3 even. That's not guaranteed to make a start. Like if your life is on the line, you got to do it.
Hopefully you have a
Um,
better option to
yes,
drop, but I know
yes,
what you're saying. There's no
yeah,
point of holding on to someone when there will be nothing to hold on to
yeah.
in the next playoff week. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of me is always like in the back of my head, like, oh, what if X team adds them and goes on like it's like, well, you know what? That doesn't matter. Like, you need to figure out how you are going to win.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
like slumping hitters. Like, okay, Kyle Tucker. We literally just had breaking news, right? He's sitting for a day. There was just news that came out that he had in June he re-injured his finger injury that originally he hurt, has a hairline fracture, right?
Mhm.
If this week was a playoff week, okay, let's say you had Kyle Tucker in your playoff matchup this week,
Mhm.
right? And obviously this was a caveat that we should have said in the beginning of the show. This is for not keepers, this is strictly redraft, nothing else.
Yep.
You have Kyle Tucker on your team, you made the playoffs, and it was announced that he's sitting the first 3 games of the week. I'm not holding on to him.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can,
I
man.
don't think you can.
Or what if it happens on a Wednesday or Thursday, right? And they say he's going to
Yeah,
be
I
out
know
the
this
next
was
3 days.
probably a bit extreme because it was like Monday through Wednesday that he sat, but
Point taken, though, that you would never normally think about that
no.
remotely, and you wouldn't get. It's understandable to make moves that drastic. It's just, I mean, it's bold. You got to assess what your what your cushion is, right? What your do you have the luxury of having bench bats, things like that, and that's probably a good thing we got to talk about too, because I think the pitching, there's a little bit of chess on the hitting side, but pitching is definitely the chess match. And I think there is a scenario where you could get out of the Tucker drop. So we'll tease that. We're going to come back to it. We're going to take our first ad break, and we'll be right back after this. So, Steve, follow me here, but I like the Tucker example and a real time practice. And what I was going to say is the chess match of pitching is really it is the volume churn versus pristine ratios and
Mhm.
keeping it, walking the tightrope is really what that is. Because there's something about the relief, and I'll tell you, it's been terrible. I've been playing this ruthless game of, oh, great, I got a 9 ERA by Tuesday. Here's grace where the rest of the week I can just plug in a guy. It doesn't matter if,
Yeah.
he's at the Brewers and I just picked him up yesterday and I know he's going to get a loss. He's going to give me some more innings, strikeouts, and a snowball's chance of getting a win. If you're in that position, it's hard to go with Tucker. However, if you're Monday and Tuesday, you get an ace-like performance out of a Sandy Alcantara and a Christopher Sanchez, and you look up and you're like, all right, I've got some closers on my roster. I got a sub-2 ERA. In my league, we have losses and home runs allowed, so it's like those are negative stats.
Mhm,
Then
mhm.
you're playing this tightrope game of like, I've got to get to my minimum innings pitch, but starting Friday, I might just bench out the rest of my starting pitchers. And if you're playing that way, I think that's when you can actually say, well, then I don't need Jack Flaherty sitting on the bottom of my
Mhm,
bench. Like I can
mhm.
drop him and stomach the Kyle Tucker day to day or whatever it is. So yeah, that chess match is very tricky on the pitching side. And you have to watch not only what your opponent's doing, but even the cadence of your starts versus your opponents, right? Because that's another part of the chess move is like, well, let's see if he rolls this guy out at Boston. If he gets rocked, then I don't need to start this next guy. So it's like, and the same thing comes into play when you're on the weekends, right? Like that's one of the best feelings when you see that you've got basically the last word on the matchup with like two guys going at 7 p.m. on Sunday Night Baseball
Mhm.
versus the other guy whose games end at 3 o'clock. Cause then you're like, oh, well, I could push for average and homers, or I could bench him out to protect ratios. So yeah, that part is very cool too. But curious for your team and your philosophy, like how you handle that pitching dilemma of volume versus ratios.
I think this is the most important tip that I've learned over the years of doing head-to-head playoff matchups. There is nothing more important than literally on whatever the notes app, Excel, paper, pen and paper. I do it on pen and paper a lot. Than writing out the starts that you have and the starts that your opponent has well ahead of your matchup, right? Like you probably know who you're going to face if you're, a week ahead of time, right? To know and plan ahead, like before your matchup starts, use the last few weeks of your regular season ads to add a starter or two if you know you're going to be down a start. Add your two start pitchers then ahead of time. Add a guy on Wednesday if you want someone for the next week, even that you like their start on Wednesday. Knowing what starts you have, how many you have versus your opponent is key. It really tells you everything that you need to do for the week. Like if you're outnumbered and just by the luck of the draw are down 13-8 on starts, like okay, yeah, you're probably going to need to pick and choose those starts and go for ratios, because you're not going to get the innings pitch, wins, whatever other categories. You'll try to avoid the losses if losses are a category, or a negative category against. That is absolutely key to
Mm-hmm.
having a shot every single week. Like, if you know that and have that advantage, like,
It's your compass
it,
for the whole
yes,
week.
yes, it is your guide for everything that you want to do. You can plan out, okay, I'm going to use these 2 ads for hitters on days that I have light hitting, and do it for hitters too. Like, look at the Tuesdays and Thursdays of the week and see, how many at bats you have. Like, that could massively either basically give you a chance or no chance at all at hitting categories with volume wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to carry more bench hitters for the week? Like, are you going up against a team that has more bench hitters that fills in those spots? Like, that's what flips the matchups from, a category loss in your favor to a category loss like against you. Like, there's nothing worse. I remember 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, um, it was the year that Trey Turner first signed with the Phillies, and my team like stuck into the playoffs, and Trey Turner was rough all year, and then he went absolutely insane, right, and carried me to the playoffs and carried me in the playoffs. I'll never forget. I lost like by whip category by like 1 out, right? Like, it was a Carlos Rodon start in San Francisco. If he came out at 5 2/3, I would have won. If he got the six, and there was like 2 runners on, and it was questionable if like it was a full count. Like, if he walked the guy, he was going to be done. He was over 100 pitches. If he got out, like, that's it. I lost, and I lost that. And like, you just go back and play. What could I have done differently?
Uh-huh.
And I think, like, from that moment on, not that I didn't pay attention to this before, but like, I paid super, super close attention to every single possible, there's nothing you can do about what the results are, right? Like, if a
Right.
guy gets blown up, guy gets blown up. But if you have the at bats and starts, you're
Control
giving
what you
yourself a
can
chance.
control.
Control what you can control and give
Yep.
yourself a fighting chance that way. That is, we're 30 minutes into the show. That's sort of my thesis, and what I'll go to bat for as far as the biggest thing that you could do to gain an advantage in these playoff weeks.
Yeah, I think it's spot on that. I mean, it's true about the real game, but in fantasy, it's equally true that like it is a game of inches. And anybody who's had those bad beats knows like it might not seem critical on Wednesday to drop a guy that you normally wouldn't drop to get those extra 4 at bats on Thursday until you lose by one,
Hit.
hit on
Yeah.
batting average. And
Yeah.
you're like, and it'll kill you too when you look at it's like the fantasy gods have a way. I mean, I can tell you firsthand, a week and a half ago, so the week before my final week where it was already starting, we knew it was going to be a grind.
Mhm.
I was down like 1 or 2 singles, and I looked at the on the Wednesday night and I said, okay, who's going Thursday? Jacob Marcy and the Pirates had a game too, and I was like, man, Nick Gonzalez is hitting for average like crazy. Marcy didn't really hit for average in the minors. I went with Gonzalez, and Jacob Marcy's been like the number 1 player in
Mhm.
fantasy for the next like 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh, that kills you. But it's kind of a process versus results thing, because at that time I was really just thinking,
For a single, you wanted a few hits.
I need a single, I need a few hits. And either one of them were a suitable replacement, even though it sounds crazy, for Andy Paez, because I needed
Mhm.
those extra ABs. So I think that's spot on, Steve. And I think writing it out is key, or keeping
Yeah.
track in your phone, because your manager is going to make tweaks
E
your opponent, and you got to
Every head-to-head matchup, I'll write out. I know the websites do a great job, and you could see like the starts of the week and everything, but just writing it out and looking and counting how many you have of each, um, just is simple, but in my mind, invaluable advice.
I think so. And to go with that, on knowing not only your opponent's strengths and weaknesses versus your strength and weaknesses, looking at your opponent's volume versus your volume, but then there's also the crystal ball part of it, which is hard. But one of my best friends, especially between like a Wednesday, Thursday through Sunday is getting very frequent with MLB.com/probable pitchers
Yeah.
and actually understanding, especially when it comes to ratios or for my home league, like home runs allowed, it's also who are they up against? You know what I mean? Like if this offense gets to uh, their pitcher, they might only last 3 innings. So, maybe I'm not out of the volume race. And then that goes for ads as well. I mean, you can do a lot worse than picking up like a Toby if they got a very favorable matchup, and then you just figure it out next week when they're at the Phillies or something. So, uh, yeah, I think all those things are notable. Like that, the way I was breaking that out and my thoughts on all this was, it was like, study your league as it relates to categories. That should be kind of a no brainer. It's more of a beginner tip, but study your team's strengths, like we talked about, study your opponent, and then study the real sport as well. Who has easy matchups in the next week? Who has Thursday games? What are the probable pitchers? And then even down to like looking at splits, like that is a very real baseball thing that, to your point, Steve, where you can pretend that you're a manager making tough calls. It's like, who are your platoon guys where you're like, oh man, I really like this hitter. They've been great for me all season, but they bat 190 against lefties. Do I really want to roll with them throughout the weekend, or do I want to go add Kyle Manzardo because he's about to mash this weekend? So, yeah, just more thoughts there. But talk to me about some of the tools that you like to use or reference points other than, like you said, kind of your homework notes on your opponent and the volume and everything. Like, what other tools do you like to be looking at throughout the week?
Yeah, not to be a homebody fanboy, but Pitcher List really does have the full list of full suite of options, that everything that you need to get through this. Every Tuesday they do an expected schedule article. It's amazing. It's detailed. It has rankings versus what offenses you want to target. Everything that you can go, everything that you need to plan well ahead. As far as expected schedules, I know a lot of places have them too. You said MLB.com. I know Fangraphs does it too, but there's some more detail, and obviously fantasy focused on the pitcher list
True.
side rather than just like a list of who's starting. There's detail about what offenses are going, who's on the road, things like that. Tiers that are broken down into that detail that are super helpful. Something that I read every day. Part of my routine is just Nick starting pitchers ranks, and there's always great streamers in there. That along with when you get PL Pro, the PL Bot is an amazing program that our boy Kyle Bland is behind, that takes PL Pro projections and spits out a streamer of the day. And here's an amazing fact. Nick and PL Bot pick a streamer every day, and they sort of have a competition. And they based on who they pick, they're granted a win or loss, and how Nick treats a win is this start useful in a 12-team league? And his sort of barometer for that is a win, not an actual win in baseball, like a win for a streaming pick. It's 5 innings pitch with a sub 1 whip, minimum 5 innings pitch, and about a strikeout per inning. So relatively high standards, and I think the roster percentage is under 20%. I could be wrong there, but it's low rostered guys that should be available in 12 teams league. So that a pretty high standard, a pretty low roster rate. Both PL Bot and Nick are 92 and 42 on the season. Do you know how good that is if like that's just one of your starters on your team? Like, I know, and not to get into the whole why we sort of fade pitching and why I tend not to invest in aces, and I know that's easier said than done. And it's cherry picking, and Nick is the best at what he does for a reason, and a bot is a bot, and there's going to be unique circumstances across leagues, and leagues may be
Mhm.
deeper, and these guys may not be available, and you can't do it every single day. Sure, I get it. There's a million caveats to it, but to have that a bit that is doable essentially, right? You're not
Mhm.
going to get 100% of that, but if you get the 80th percentile of those results, that's really good. So basically, like if you plan out your week and just plan to stream the PO bot pick every day, you're gonna do pretty good.
Right.
Um, so like there's that
And they're
ability
and they're
there.
wi and they're guys that are widely
Yeah,
available.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. That's why they're streaming
yeah,
picks.
you got Jack Perkins on the pitchers tomorrow list
Yeah,
that it's like it's not a plus one, but it's still projected as passable if you're like chasing volume. And yeah, I think those are great thoughts on like the tools, the different things that you're looking at. How do you handle, I guess, back to our earlier topic of matchup, this week's matchup versus next week's matchup? Are you really going until Sunday afternoon before you start looking ahead? Or like, where's the threshold on kind of investing assets this week toward next week's matchup? Like,
trying not
how
to
comfortable do you need to be?
trying not to like touch the money. Like
Uh-huh.
you could tell when you have X amount of categories locked up to win a week, and you can start making moves. Um, I really don't want to start making moves until like Friday, the earliest,
Uh-huh.
just because so much can change over the weekend. Like I'll
I'd agree
start
with
making
that.
move for the next week, like Saturday or Sunday, if things are in the bag.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, um, Obviously Sunday for sure. You'll probably know most of your fate by then, but
Yep.
earliest is Friday potentially.
Mhm.
But even then, you could start doing like ads for the weekend, like with next week in sight. Like a tiebreaker could be, okay, these are two streamers that I like, but one has a better matchup next week. Okay, there you go. That's sort
Mhm.
of as much as you could do. Even if you just give yourself a chance to hold someone, right? If they have a
Mhm.
better matchup next week, you may not even want to use them. You may need to drop them the next day for something else. But that's the sort of logic that I would apply. But really, really not until like late in the weekend to actually do an ad that's solely for the next matchup, right?
Mhm. And then do you, in terms of your general style, if volume is tight on the pitching side, do you play it conservative? Like, I think on those Mondays are really the ones where you sweat the most. If it's like you got a questionable starting pitcher going before your opponent has pitchers and volume is a little up in the air, do you find yourself rolling people out there, or do you play it pretty safe? Like, is your default volume or ratios, or it really is tough to pin down?
My default is definitely volume. Like,
Okay.
I want to make sure that I have, if not more, as many starts as my opponent, um, both for hitting and for pitching. I really, really, again, maybe that's more of like, you can control what you can control. And like,
Mhm.
I don't know. And my general output is like, I'm not, I don't want to, you're sure, like there's going to be blow ups and the Bailey over thing that you have to deal with last year, right? And the
Mhm.
game that was pouring rain and give up 17 earned runs in the first inning, right? And
Knock
you have
me
to,
out, knock me out of my league on a Monday.
you have to deal with that when you start everyone. But that's always been sort of my default, and I think sort of just how I lean, because I don't have a team with Paul Skeens and Tariq Skubal, right, with pocket aces, right. That's just not
Yeah.
how I'll be built. Where if you have a team like that, then you do want to focus maybe on less starts and protecting your ratios, right. So
Yeah.
that's just how I lean and
I
what I
like
want to do. But I always want to have as many, if not more, starts than my opponent each week.
that makes sense, and I think that comes down to like knowing knowing your league in terms of not only the categories that you have, but also if you know that your opponents aren't the super aggressive listening to fantasy baseball podcast
Yeah.
type of guys, you can cook them on the volume game,
Yeah. Yeah.
as opposed to just rolling it out. And now, as a commissioner, Steve, I know I've shared a little bit with you about how we've structured our league, but we're now in next year will be year 25, which is crazy. But we have long since tried to neutralize some of those like volume, or like you said at the start of the show, of like dumb luck of your opponent has 13 starts and you only have 8 because that's the way it shook out. Just as a fun tidbit, I'm curious your thoughts on it, but the way we've structured it is not only have we added some negative pitching categories such as home runs allowed, where the volume kind of factors in, but starting 2 years ago, we've added that a manual rule that if you have a 2-start pitcher, you're only allowed to choose their first or their second start.
What?
And so it has turned into this huge, and some manager, like 3 or 4 managers are like, I absolutely hate this rule. It's not how we
Is
manage
this
the
every
entire
week or just in the
no, just in
playoffs?
the playoffs. The
What?
rules change, and you gotta choose your starts wisely. Now, there's still some teams that roll into playoffs with 4 relief pitchers and other ones that go in with no relief pitchers. So there can be a volume discrepancy, but there is no dumb luck allowed on who happens to be 2-start pitchers.
Yeah.
The other thing we do is minimum service time. So if you add a complete bum on Saturday to get a few extra innings on Sunday, you have to roster that guy for
How
10
do you
10
track
days.
these rules? Like, how do you track these roster restrictions?
Well, we have if you have a roster illegal move, you get frozen for 10 days. So you can't make an add or a drop.
You know what I'm saying? Like, is someone tracking every single ad and saying, okay, you can't drop this, or is there like,
Yeah,
is
no,
it
no, no.
built
I
into
got
the system?
So over the years, we've developed our watchdogs. So, Gamba, who is Gamba, Chase, like there's 3 or 4 who take an immense amount of pride and they're not even the commissioner, flagging that someone dropped a guy a half a day early. And then going into playoffs, it definitely stresses me out. Like even though my team got bounced,
You got to watch
as a
for.
commissioner, I'm sending daily, weekly reminders. And I'm like, the most important thing for any of you to remember is if you have questions about the legality of a move, text me before you make it, because the worst thing we can do is find ourselves on a Sunday where someone like illegally recorded stats. But people care too much about their like it has yet to
Yeah.
happen to date, but it's definitely it's a looming nightmare. But I just wanted to share that with you, that we have different chess moves
Yeah.
in play
Yeah.
because of the fact that you can't add
And
for
and
volume.
and I guess overarching, like that's why it's so important to know your league quirks and everything like that. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that you guys could only choose one start. I mean, I get it. Like, right? Like, what's what? Like, there's no skill in someone just happen to have a start push back a day, and then therefore they have 3 2-star pitchers, and
Mhm.
you're automatically done there. I get it, but
It makes the performance on the field
yeah,
mean a little bit
yeah,
more, and there's still some management, but yeah,
yeah.
listen, we have a year-end banquet where we argue about this stuff, but yeah, just wanted to share that little tidbit. Okay, we got some actionable advice on the next segment here. We're going to be looking at some soft matchups, but we're going to take our second ad break. We'll be right back after this. All right, Steve. So I know we kind of mapped out um, some of the softer pitcher matchups, but is there anything else regarding strategy, tips, and tricks that you wanted to kind of throw out before we move on from that segment?
No, I don't think so. I think we hit on all of it, and
Hmm.
um, there's a good amount of softer and high level analysis there. I think
Yeah,
that can go
I
around
think
there for sure.
the only other thing that and these sound like really rudimentary tips as well, but nothing is too extreme. Like in the playoffs, I have set alarms on my phone at like 3 in the morning
Oh yeah, I did
to
it in regular season
be
too.
the quick you're right, to
Yeah.
be the quickest one to add a guy. There's times where I've set, daytime alarms on my phone to check a matchup and see if I need to bench a pitcher for that night. So
Dude,
if
I
you're
have notifications on for my league that every time there's a move made, like I'm notified of who was dropped and who was added.
yeah,
Like,
no, that hits my
yeah,
phone too. I
yeah,
think that's valid, but it's
yeah,
now that we're in, fatherhood in our
yeah,
30s, I think some of our listeners might be like, what do I, how do you even manage that? And it's like, just know you're not alone. If you want to set that
yeah.
alarm or you want to put a alarm clock at 5:55 p.m. to see if you need to start that pitcher or not at 6 o'clock,
Mhm.
go to those links. That's the
Yeah.
last thing I'll say because it is.
They come in more handy now. It's been significantly harder for me to manage this year as a father of two than a father of one last year with like a, and uh last year when I had
A
just a 2 year
toddler,
old, right?
just a
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And
no,
now it's a newborn and a toddler. It's been a lot harder. So those reminders have, yeah, I missed more starts this year probably than my whole fantasy career before that. At least in my home league, yeah. But yeah, the 3 a.m. alarm for waivers clearing and the ads resetting on Yahoo, um, on a Sunday night was a very, very common thing for me, even during regular season, more than I care to admit.
hey, I would have taken one half
Yeah,
category and I'd be in the
yeah,
playoffs.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, you're not wrong.
Hmm.
All right, well, talk to me about your lineup here, Steve. You're pretty much looking at soft opponents for pitchers, right?
Yeah, John PGH. I talked about him last year when we did the show. He has a great data set of basically a bunch of baseball data. He has a Substack that's definitely worth checking out, and also does the for the people. He posts a bunch of automated tweets from that data each day. Just some interesting data, and then um, some helpful schedules. He basically has a bot that tweets out on his Twitter page. Um, Starting pitching matchups next 7 days versus like the worst offenses. So starting pitcher versus the White Sox, Angels, Pirates, and then Rockies on the road. Um, and it's obviously what's on the tweet today is relevant, but this will also come out next week, right? If your
Mhm.
playoffs are starting then, so like you'll know in 7 days who's facing the Rockies on the road, like right, like this Braxton Ashcraft, who's looked pretty good and now is in the rotation, faces the Rockies on the 23rd. Like, I am super, super interested in that. Like, imagine having that as your Saturday start in a playoff matchup, right? That's to me, that's an invaluable resource. And, you may not be able to pick those things up as plainly on those just plain
Yeah, for sure.
schedule list. So it's a great tool. John does a great job and has a really great amount of data. And there's just a lot of interesting guys like Hurston Waldrop today. Like uh, was on this list for 7 days right prior to this. I know he's been pretty good recently too, but he threw a gem today versus the White Sox, right? You could just get ahead of your opponents by looking at this data. That every little thing. Um, that's and this is one of them. So it's a great follow and just a great data set to be cognizant of.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's John
John
Anderson, right?
PGH, yeah, John
Yeah, yeah.
Anderson, John PGH is his Twitter handle. JONPGH.
Isn't it, and am I right in remember, is this John Anderson? Isn't there a John Anderson with Fangraphs or was with Fangraphs? Or maybe I'm forgetting this. Um,
Uh, don't know off the bat.
there is, but this one's no H in the name. So maybe there's two John Anderson.
It
Well,
could be. But I mean, yeah, probably the most common and first name, most common last name. So
Yeah, yeah, fair play, fair play. No,
yeah,
that's great. So yeah, this rundown, you guys can go check it out. But it's got the White Sox against the Angels against Pitt, and
yeah, and
Rocky
it's not,
Road as well. Yeah.
and it's tweeted out every single day. So like it's not just for just on Mondays or anything like that. Like you'll be able to look at it at any time to see when you want to make that ad for favorable matchups. I used it extensively during the playoffs last year, and it's
Hmm.
honestly it's something that should be used all the time, right? Like
Yeah.
basically just use your streamers off of that. You're probably gonna do pretty good too.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. One thing that I do a little bit more in playoffs as just a general tool is rather than sorting by like last 14 days or last 30 days or anything, is even doing the projected like next 7 days just to start and say,
Yeah.
oh, they got
Um,
this guy projected for 3.5 steals. Like, why is that? And it's like
Ra-
factored in, right?
Rasball has a great tool. It's a paid tool. I think PLBot has it too, but just like hitters matchups for the week, and you could just sort by like dollars. It's like, okay, this guy's projected for X amount of points compared to other people, and like it's doing the work for you in a sense, right?
Hmm.
Like it's just taking the volume and the projections and converting it to a dollar. You probably do pretty well with that if you're just streaming hitters based on that too, right? Definitely like I'm a victim of this all the time, right? Like I always look at last 14, last 7, who's hot. Oh, this is great. You don't get those last 14 days of value, right? Yeah, sure. It may tell you that Jacob Marcy's been great, and he has been. He could very well and should probably is a very good ad, but it's probably more helpful to add the guy has more projected value, right? I know that you're sort of trusting the machine and analytics and things like that. And results do matter, and hot streaks are a thing in baseball, but you want to get that future value, and those planners do a great job of guiding you the right way to do that. It is an underutilized tool. Like I think of the Streaminator and PL Bot all the time for pitchers. I don't think of it as much for hitters, and probably should use it more. And it's definitely helpful um, in your head-to-head matchups.
Yep, yep. And the PL bot projection sheet, you can just go sort by uh, tomorrow, day after
Mhm.
tomorrow, sort it by stolen
And
bases,
they have
sort it
a,
by
a 7 day, right? They have a seven, like I have a
oh yeah,
weekly hitters
no,
weekly.
weekly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. I
Yep,
don't
yep.
know if the weekly one is just fixed for that full week, right? I don't know
Yeah,
that they do
I
like a rest
believe
of
so.
week.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But still, yeah, invaluable tool. So
yeah.
yeah, that is all around nice organic plug for PL Pro.
There you go.
Um, so yeah, that's pretty much the rundown. I
Yeah.
don't know that we need the entirety of the hour, Steve, but any
No.
other final tips? Otherwise, tell me how playoffs is looking for you. You said you're already kind of clinched,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I'm basically locked into the third spot, which is annoying because first two seeds get a bye. I was
Mhm.
in first or second basically until mid June, early July, maybe up until the All Star break when I lost that stranglehold on second. So we'll definitely have to battle my way. The 3 plays 6 in our league, and you need to win 3 weeks rather than um, just the two if you have the bye. I was in third last year though when I won, so but obviously I felt much more stronger about my team last year. I don't know, maybe
Three's a good
Tat-
number.
if Tatis remembers how to hit a home run again. And gets on I don't know, finishes somehow with 25 homers when he's been sitting on 17 basically for what seems like since the All Star break.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, who knows? Crazier things have happened, right? Um, so we'll see, we'll see. And it's funny, like I'm starting to feel a little bit better about my hitting. Guys like George Springer's been a great ad for me. Gunnar Henderson's starting to pick it up. Karen Carpenter's been great. Stour has been awesome, but is on the IL, and who
Yeah.
knows? I don't know if he's going to be back this year. It sounded like it might be a little bit longer than you hope, but now my pitching is starting to fade a little bit. Like, honestly, my best pitcher of the last few weeks has been Trevor Rogers, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Like Yuri's kind of running out of steam a little bit here the last few starts. DeGrom had the fatigue in his start miss. Mizorowski's been rough since coming back, including today. So, I don't know, but who knows? Maybe I'll be able to stream my way to some good matchups there. But we'll see. It's exciting.
You'll be better suited for your league than my league settings in terms of you can play the volume game and
Yeah.
so
That's for sure.
that's good.
Yeah.
Before we sign off to end my commiseration here, I told you I lost half category behind one of our perennial winners in our league, and then loyal WAF listener TJ. And I got to share because TJ's team name is Comeback Tommy. A lot of he had a merger. He's got a co-manager, but he does about 90% of the managing. This is how he finished out, Steve, and he edged me out by a half game. 4 weeks ago, he won 16-2. Then he won 13-5. Had an 8-9 loss, and in the last week to edge me out by a half game, won 15-3. So the comeback vibes for Mr. Tom Joseph, who has never won our league in its 24-year history. He is riding a wave right now. So yeah, I am pulling for TJ.
Is he winning his first week playoff matchup?
He is down 10-6, but it's razor thin on a lot of categories. So we're all pulling for him. So yeah, I had to shout him out because it's part of my misery, but also one of our best listeners in the WAF nation. So yeah, but that's a great show, man. Great tips. Good luck to you in the last week and the start of next week. I know we'll be back on next week and throughout September. Just keeping up. If you guys are still joining us, if you have any players, any topics you guys want us to hit on, fire away on Twitter or on the email. You guys can email whenever, winsabovefantasy@gmail.com. I'm at Van_verified. Steve is at Stav8818. But that's episode 190, talking the head-to-head playoff primer. Thanks for talking baseball with us, guys.
Fantasy baseball is not for the faint of heart.
Oh, that hit in my soul, Steve. It hit in my soul. Signing off. Thanks for talking about my misery.
Later, guys.